Hi guys, this is CyanogenMod and I'm here with the famous OnePlus One for a full review. The famous smartphone was announced back in April, it was launched in June, and we got it from Panda Whale in about 40 days after ordering it. It's a very hyped phone, a very rare phone, because its purchase is most times based on invitations. The price tag that we paid for this device is about $300 plus the extra fees that its transport involved, plus entering the country and all that. Overall, you should pay about $300 for it if you're in China, and add a few dozens of dollars more for the shipping and such things. By the way, OnePlus is a young company, and the OnePlus One is actually their very first product, their first phone, and it comes as a surprise because it's very good, it has quality specs, and it's a high-end device. Let's discuss the design a bit here at gsnmod.com. The design overall reminds me of an Oppo device. It's a 5.5 incher that measures 8.9mm in thickness, and it weighs 162 grams. It has pretty small bezels, as you can see next to the screen, and it's also a bit taller and thicker than the Galaxy Note 3, just as a reference as far as the size goes. The design is pretty simple, nothing fancy here. We got a polycarbonate back, pretty good grip, and we also have an aluminum-like frame. You can see this shiny little thing here all around the device. As I said, it's aluminum-like. I cannot exactly guarantee it's aluminum or not. Frame that goes all around the device. It's also slightly elevated compared to the screen, as you can see right here. Okay, the sides of the device are flat. It adopts a pretty rectangular design. However, the back is a bit rounded, as you can see, just slightly rounded. The first impression is that this model is an Oppo Find 5 lookalike, and you also have slightly rounded corners and rounded top and bottom. The grip is good, as I said, and it's actually 6mm longer than the LG G3, which is another famous 5.5 inch phone. You can actually feel this extra length. On the front side, we got the earpiece right here at the top, a camera near it. We also have these 3 capacitive buttons below the screen right here. You can barely see them, but you can adjust that later. Also at the front you have the proximity sensor, ambient light sensors, and all the other sensors you need at the top. While moving at the back, we find the camera, dual LED flash, a microphone, and that's pretty much it at the back side. At the top we find audio jack and an extra microphone. At the bottom, micro USB port, microphone, and speakers. And finally, on the left side, which means here, we have the micro SIM tray that you can pull out with a special metal key, and also the volume buttons. If you ask me, the volume buttons are a bit too thin to be pressed comfortably, and on the right side we have the on-off button, also small, also thin, maybe too thin to be pressed comfortably. I could say that this model is a bit too large for the average user. I should say maybe a bit too long, but you can get used to it. You can always get used to a phablet, especially if it has a good price and good specs and it's a quality device. It's also a bit of a fingerprint magnet at the front. Now let's discuss hardware. So we're getting a quad-core Snapdragon 801 processor here, clocked at 2.5 GHz. We also have a GPU available on this device, obviously, the Adreno 330. The screen is a 5.5 inch IPS LCD with full HD resolution and a density of 401 ppi. Now, as far as storage goes, this model comes in versions with 16 GB of storage or 64 GB, and there's no microSD card slot here. As far as the RAM is concerned, we get 3 GB of LPDDR3 RAM, and at the back there's a 13 megapixel camera with dual LED flash, while at the front we have a 5 megapixel shooter that's ideal for selfies. And on the connectivity side, we have available the HSDPA Plus with 42.2 MB/s download. There's also LTE, we got Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi Direct, DLNA, Bluetooth 4.1, and NFC, micro USB 2.0, USB on the go, and USB host. Other things worth mentioning on this device, well, the dual mono speakers at the bottom. These are actually mono speakers, accelerometer, gyroscope, and compass, plus obviously the battery, a 3100 mAh unit, lithium polymer unit for that matter. And we also have a bunch of screenshots that show us the performance of the battery. Okay, so 3100 mAh battery with Wi-Fi on, brightness of 50%, we achieved 8 hours and 54 minutes of HD video playback in a loop. I would say we can go up to even 9 hours, as you can see, 4% left, so about 9 hours of video playback. This is actually pretty good. If you compare this to the LG G3 that has 5 hours and 6 minutes, I would say we're doing just fine. Meanwhile, the HTC Desire 816 gives you 7 hours and 44, and I mentioned that model because of the similar diagonal and similar price tag. Also in the meantime, the Galaxy S5 scores 11 hours, but that's in a different price league actually. The charging is surprisingly good, I would say 1 hour and 50 minutes, so it charges pretty fast. The standby time is not that good. You will lose several percentages, even about 15 or 20 during a nighttime sleep, so the standby is not very impressive. Also, I didn't find any power saving options here. They either slipped below my sharp vision or there aren't any. Okay, this is it as far as the battery is concerned. Pretty impressive, about 9 hours of HD video playback. Now on the audio side, I should mention that in spite of the fact we're running CyanogenMod 11S, there's no audio player pre-installed. I just had to go ahead and install my own, play music. Usually when you're messing around with CyanogenMod, there's that cool little player called Apollo that I like very much. In this case, there wasn't. There are also no headphones in the package of the device. And let's get all of that out of the way. Let's start the tune here. Speakers here. As you can see, there is a bit of a visualizer thingy going on here in the lock screen, which is kind of cute. Okay, so we got a crisp and warm sound, a very loud volume and good bass. There is also the option to mess around with the audio settings through an app called Audio FX. It's actually very nice. There are options here for everything. There are options for the speaker, headset, USB, Bluetooth and wireless. And let's see what else. You can obviously play with those options here. This is the speaker area. Let's see what else we have available. So we also have some equalizer presets listed here. We have normal, got classical, dance, flat, folk, heavy metal, hip hop, jazz, pop, rock, electronic, small speakers and custom, so you can mess around with those sound waves as you like. Then we got some reverb options like plate, large hall, medium hall, large room, small room or none. And let's actually get some of them going. Let's start this tune again. And let's go back to the app. Okay, here we go. This is normal. You can actually feel them as you're customizing them. And now the reverb. Okay, that's pretty much it. You just saw the customization available here, the reverb and things like that. And now let's discuss pure theory, which is the test with all decibel meter that we rely on. So this is it. This is our decibel meter. We achieved a very impressive 90.5 decibels. This is the highest score we have achieved ever since we bought the decibel meter, and I would say this model can even go to a fight with the HTC One M8 when it comes to the volume. But once again, we have dual mono speakers, not stereo speakers. But the audio is very good, at least as far as the bass, customization and volume are concerned. Now on the video side, what you're seeing here is a 5.5 inch screen with a 920 over 1080 pixel resolution, IPS LCD, 401 ppi, and no video player pre-installed. And that's why I'm going to rely on MX Player that I installed, my favorite player on Android. And let's see. This is our usual test video. We got a bright screen, we got realistic colors, which is quite atypical for an IPS, those realistic colors. We also have wide viewing angles, which is actually typical for an IPS. That's pretty much it as far as the viewing experience is concerned. Okay, this device uses Japan display technology. It's also based on low temperature polysilicon and has Gorilla Glass 3 protection. It's both crisp and clear, and this is yet another sample. The blacks are not that deep. The contrast is not so good, but surprisingly it handles sunlight pretty okay. The pixels are of the RGB stripe kind, and an interesting aspect, we used the lux meter to measure the brightness on this model, and we found that in the lower side of the screen we achieved 372 lux units, while in the upper side of the screen we achieved 404 lux units. Meanwhile, the Xperia Z2 gets 366 lux units, the Galaxy S5 480 lux units, and the LG G3 343 lux units. We beat 2 out of these 3 flagships, so I would say we're doing pretty fine. You can also mess around with the settings as far as the display is concerned, and we have some very interesting ones here. Display and lights. We have the rotation degrees listed here, sleep time, font size, you can cast screen if you want to, pulse notification light, battery light, and there's also adaptive backlight that will dynamically adjust the brightness of the display backlight to maximize battery life. So it's basically a tweak for battery life. And then there's something called screen color that allows a high degree of customization. There's standard, there's also vivid if you think the colors are not warm enough, and there's custom. This is where the nifty part comes in. You get to play with your own hue, your own saturation, your own contrast, and your own intensity, and save them afterwards or reset them. So you can actually tweak the experience to your liking, which I find to be very good. Overall, the screen is good. It doesn't break any records, although it's pretty bright, has good viewing angles, and those customization options are always welcome. I want to discuss about the camera now. 13 megapixel shooter right here, dual LED flash, a 5 megapixel front camera, selfie cam, and this main cam, it may seem small at first sight, but it uses a pretty good Sony sensor. It's a Sony IMX214 CMOS sensor that measures about 1/3 of an inch, and it offers an f2.0 aperture. Just as a curiosity, it's the same sensor that's used on the Oppo Find 7. It has a 6-lens setup, and the interface, as you'll see in a minute, people with CyanogenMod will feel right at home, and even people with stock Android will feel at home because it's a derivation of the standard stock Android app. Okay, so at the bottom you have the main options like like front camera shortcut, flash options, main options, and settings. Then on the right we have the video capture button, shutter button, panorama button. You can do zoom in up to 4 times, and it has a very fast focus, as you can see, and also very fast picture taking. It already took those pictures without hassle, without problems, so a very fast camera. Okay, now let's get the options out of the way. We got exposure to play with here, and let's not exit the camera app just yet. As I said, exposure comes first, and then we got white balance, and then comes this beautiful list of options that we'll cover a bit later. This one includes auto, HDR, smart scene, beauty mode, slow shutter, action, backlight, beach, candlelight, fireworks, flowers, landscape, night portrait, party, portrait, snow, sports, steady photo, sunset, theater, mono, sepia, negative, solarize, posterize, aqua, emboss, sketch, and neon. So there's a lot of stuff to play with here. Okay, and aside from the options, we also have a timer and location. But getting back to those options, okay, so auto pretty much speaks for itself. HDR2, smart scene will auto detect the scene you're in. For example, it senses it's a night shot, or it senses you're taking a picture of landscape and stuff like that. Beauty mode will tweak your face or the face of the person you're taking a picture with. Slow shutter will handle those pictures where you want to capture a beautiful raindrop falling from the sky, for example. And now let's see the other modes. There isn't exactly much to say about the other modes. As I said, slow shutter for actions that you really want to catch, action for fast moving actions, backlight, beach, candlelight, fireworks, flowers. Flowers actually works. I've taken pictures of flowers with this option on, and it adds a little bit of something to the flowers. Landscape, night, the night modes also work, pretty nice night capture, party, sports, steady photo, sunset, theater, and then come the effects you can apply to your pics. And now we go to the settings area where you can tweak the size. We got from 13 megapixels to QVGA, and the 13 and 12 megapixel shots are taken in 4:3 aspect, while the 9.7 megapixel shot is 16:9. And even though you're taking a 4:3 picture, the viewfinder is 16:9, so it may be a bit of a problem. Quality goes from 55% to 95 and 100%. We usually kept it at 90% to not exaggerate the features of the pictures. We got a burst mode with up to 20 shots, got slow shutter speed at 1/2 of a second, 1 second, and up to 8 seconds. This one is used for what I said earlier, if you want to capture a raindrop falling from the sky. Touch focus duration goes from 5 seconds to 30 seconds, 20 seconds, or infinite, depending on what you want. Focus mode, auto, continuous picture, infinity, or macro. ISO going up to 1600. Auto exposure, frame average, center weighted spot metering, anti-bending, 50 or 60 Hz or auto. Then we move over to the video options. We got videos in 1080p, 720p, 480p, and surprise, we have two versions of 4K video capture. One is UHD, which is 3840 over 2160 pixels, and the other one is 4K DCI. This one is 4096 over 2160, so it has more pixels on the horizontal. It's also compressed, the DCI, with JPEG 2000, and has a bitrate of up to a crazy 250 mega per second, obviously not on this device. We also have this mode, slow motion with high frame rate in 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second. Then we have time lapse. You can choose video codecs, MPEG-4, H2.63 and H264, audio codec AMR, NB and AAC, also available here. And in the section I like to call others, we got a power button assigned to taking a photo, volume buttons to control zoom, and even left-handed special options. Now let's actually take a shot, choosing the auto option, focusing quickly, and here we go, picture without a flash. I would say we're doing pretty fine. Here we go, lots of detail, reasonably impressive shot, 30 megapixel shooter, $300 phone, and I would say we are doing quite fine. Okay, we're done with the castle, we're off to the gallery, and in this gallery, as usual, we've taken an OCD level number of pictures. We have pictures taken during daylight, during nighttime, and during the cloudy time of the day, so we have everything. So let's check them all out. If the device will rotate, okay. So you notice some things here. You notice the realistic colors. There is no oversaturation. Some people may even say it's an undersaturation, because sometimes the colors feel very cold. We got good brightness, and we also have a good HDR. So let's skip ahead, give up the cat for now, and let's search that picture of a Donald Duck, because it's our HDR sample. Here it is, a regular Donald Duck in a cloudy day. Getting even closer, and check this out, regular picture and HDR picture. As you can see, the HDR picture didn't exactly brighten it up, instead it made the water look more realistic. So water without HDR doesn't seem like water, too green, and then water with HDR starting to look like water. That's what HDR did in this case. It didn't exaggerate with brightness like it does on several other devices, so I would say we're doing fine. I actually used that special flowers mode out of curiosity, and this is what came out. Totally impressive, wallpaper worthy, and a nifty little macro. The last roses this summer, and they're looking quite hot. So remember, the flowers mode actually works. Okay, I also use the slow shutter thingy to capture some moving water. Here we go, some water jets in a fountain. That's what slow shutter is all about. You can see the water bubbles moving thanks to that slow shutter thing. I would say we got good lighting here. And I also have a nice macro or two to show you, even one with a bit of a statue. Very good quality, everything is crisp. And once again, impressed by the lighting and the exposure, but some people keep saying the colors are a bit too cold compared to what they're used to. We also have a panorama here, provided I can find it. Here we go. Not as wide as some people would like, but it should do the trick. I would also say we have some pretty good landscape shots. And I would confirm that thing about the undersaturation in some frames, especially the ones that involve vegetation. The green doesn't exactly seem impressive enough. And also, if you zoom in on most shots, you'll see the noise appearing pretty fast, especially on your PC. So it's not exactly the flagship level, it's not exactly on the same level as the Galaxy S5 or the Xperia Z2 or even the LG G3. It's about in the same league as the HTC One and HTC One M8, which means just a little half of a step lower than the high-end flagships. More samples will obviously be found in our full review or text review on gsndom.com. We also have a few nighttime shots. Not very impressive, I have to say. So this is one of them. Another one without flash and with flash. The flash tends to exaggerate a bit, makes things a bit too bright at night. But surprisingly, we got these macro shots at night with the same flash that I'm complaining about. You can see its biggest problem right here. Picture without a flash, maybe too yellowish. Picture with flash, a bit exaggerated. So you'd better stay without the flash unless you want to perform a nighttime macro. Okay, now on the video side, we don't have any stabilization and we totally lose quality during zoom. That's a fact. So let's check out these samples. Regular filming during daylight. And now let's check out some slow motion action in 120 frames per second. Maybe this one. We have 4 videos following each other. So this is the 60 FPS. This is the 120 frames per second slow-mo video. And now let's check out the 60 frames per second one. Taking a while to load all those pictures, quite annoying for a Snapdragon 801 device. So this is the regular shot and this is the 60 frames per second shot. It's supposed to be very smooth, to have an impressive image. I would say it's not on par with other 60 frames per second videos I've seen. Okay, and at least in the videos we have here for you, we can see that the image is pretty crisp, pretty bright. Of course, there is a slight problem with the wind on a windy day. So crisp image, good lighting, a bit cold on the color side. And now let's see that cool thing, that 4K DCI with more pixels than usual 4K images. It's a video of a train. Here we go. This is the 4K I was talking about, with more pixels than usual, and even the 4K video do not feel as impressive as they were on a Galaxy Note 3, Galaxy S5 or Xperia Z2. There's that little something missing from the shot and I don't know exactly what. That's why I said the colors feel a bit cold. I'm guessing it's the fault of the colors and the lack of gloss and shine that the Galaxy S5 and Xperia Z2 have. By the way, we're capturing stereo audio when we're filming. Let's see what else. The 4K video can go up to 57 mega per second in bitrate, also 30 frames per second available here, and the 4K DCI goes even up to 60 plus mega per second and 24 Mbps. The Full HD videos have a bitrate of 19 mega per second, and I would say the filming is less impressive than other flagships, sadly, especially because Even if the image is crisp, if you zoom in, you'll be disappointing. There's no optical image stabilization, but for the price range of $300, I would say we're doing fine. We're about in the same range as the HTC One or the HTC One M8 or even the Xperia Z1, but we're below the Galaxy S5, Xperia Z2 or LG G3. However, you can take some nice pictures if you really want to. Okay, now to the performance. As far as the temperature is concerned, after playing 15 minutes of Riptide GP2, we achieved a temperature of 43.1 degrees Celsius, which means there's no overheating, but the temperature gets a bit high. Now let's check out the web browser on this device, which, by the way, it has to be Chrome because we actually didn't find one pre-installed. Okay, so let's go to Google first and then to gsndon.com. It's actually Chrome, so it doesn't exactly need testing from our part because everybody knows Chrome, but it's important to mention that this phone came without a browser pre-installed, so we had to resort to good old Chrome. And as far as the keyboard is concerned, well, it feels a bit strange on a 5.5-inch screen. I would have expected it to be a little more comfy to use. It feels a bit rigid for some reason, but it does have a ton of options to play with. Sadly, most of the cool options, or the ones that really need tweaking, are in Chinese, so that's not exactly nice. Okay, it's time to do some benchmarks, and we have a lot of them to show you, and I truly mean a lot. Screenshots area, here we go. First up is quadrant. Okay, so we scored 24,429. We beat the LG G3 in its 3GB of RAM version because it scored 22,235. We also beat the Galaxy S5 and it's 22,739. We beat the Xperia Z2 and it's 17,000, and we narrowly beat the HTC One M8 and it's 24,217. Next up, there's Antutu benchmark, and in Antutu we scored 37,421. This is the area where we beat the LG G3 with its 3GB of RAM, that scored 35,000, Galaxy S5 34,000, Xperia Z2 33,000, and HTC One M8 34,000, so we beat all of them again. Nenamark 2 63 frames per second, once again a victory. We beat the LG G3 with its 59.9 frames per second, Galaxy S5 60 frames per second, Xperia Z2 59.8 frames per second, and HTC One M8 59.3 frames per second. Next up, Velamo, impressive score 3002. This is where we beat all of them yet again, with LG G3 getting 2400, Galaxy S5 1645, Xperia Z2 1600, and HTC One M8 getting 1716 points. Okay, next up, 3D Mark. Of course, we also did the other tests in the new Velamo. Multicore, good score, and Metal, very high score. In 3D Mark, yet another victory, 19,397 points. We beat the LG G3 by about 3,000 points, Galaxy S5 by only about 700 points. Meanwhile, Xperia Z2 got 18,000 points, and HTC One M8 17,000 points. We're getting to the end. Geekbench 3, 969 in the single core test, 26 in the multi-core one, and we beat them all again, maybe aside from the HTC One M8 that scored 979 in the single core test and 2748 in the multi-core test, so it narrowly beat us. Meanwhile, LG G3 960 in the first, 2333 in the second, Galaxy S5 854 in the first, and 2553 in the second. Finally, Xperia Z2 941 and 2748, so it beat us narrowly. GFX in the T-Rex off-screen 1080p test, 28.4 frames per second. All of the other models scored 27.3 or 0.4 frames per second, so we beat them all, and the HTC One M8 came close with its 28 frames per second. Finally, the speed test, 26 megapixel in download. We beat all the other models that scored a maximum of 23 megapixel, and that one was the Galaxy S5. And in the upload section we got 22 megapixel. We only got beaten by the Galaxy S5 and its 24 megapixel, and the Xperia Z2 and its 23 megapixel. Browser Mark 2.1, 1368, a very high score. As far as I know, the highest score in this new version is about 1600, scored by a by a Nexus 5. Meanwhile, the LG G3 gets 1100 points, and the rest of the models have not been tried with the new test. Finally, SoundSpider, a pretty low score, 1048, the lower the better. LG G3 has 650, Galaxy S5 413, and Xperia Z2 1017. So all of them are better than us. I would say that in conclusion, all of these benchmarks are, or most of them are, won by the OnePlus One. It wins about 80 to 90% of all the tests compared to all the flagships in 2014. Now let's discuss the phone area a little bit. This is the dialer. We have good signal, excellent sound quality, and a very loud earpiece. The operating system, well, our OnePlus One model was shipped with CyanogenMod 11S applied on top of Android 4.4.2. It's a custom ROM based on the AOSP, and it's more customizable, plus it has a ton of options you can play with, and it also keeps some of the nifty stock stuff. The capacitive keys at the bottom can be deactivated, so you can use on-screen keys, and that's only one example of what you can do on this device. So if I go to the buttons area, and I can enable on-screen bar nav, and this is it. You now have a home button, back button, and multitasking area at your disposal, and you can give up on the capacitive buttons if you truly want to. Okay, and let's see what else. There are also gestures you can perform on the lock screen. So if you perform a U, it should trigger the flashlight. Or I just triggered the camera because I maybe performed an O. So let's try a clear U this time. Nope, let's try again. Maybe a V. Here we go, flashlight. My U was not convincing at all. So let's try to turn the flashlight off. Okay, now let's enter the camera by performing an O. Finally, it caught on, and a double tap to wake, obviously the oldest gesture in the book. Here we go. So remember, V for flashlight, O for camera, and double tap to wake. As far as I know, those are pre-installed and cannot be changed on the device, so we have some nifty shortcuts. As you can see, the icons in this interface are pretty squared. Those four ones here illustrate that point the best, and also the ones for audio effects, camera, calendar. They're also pretty minimalistic and light on the eye. There's also customizable dock. You can even remove the shortcut to the apps area, and if you want to access the widgets, there's no separate area here in the app section. You have to keep the screen pressed, and then you can see the wallpapers. There are also CyanogenMod wallpapers that you can play with there, and you can also see the widgets and settings. These are the widgets, most of them you know, some of them are specific to CyanogenMod. Okay, and now in the notification area is the usual CyanogenMod experience, but only with the icons a bit customized. It's also pretty much stock with a few modifications and a new design, and if you want multitasking, you keep the menu button pressed, and you also have a kill all option at the top. There's also very much theme customizability, so to say. You get packs, styles, icons, fonts, lock screen, wallpaper. You can customize anything, even the boot animation, the sound pack. You simply have to go to settings in an area called themes, and here, as I said, you got theme packs. You can make your device look like an LG, like an HTC, like a Samsung. You have styles, you can download more if you want. You have icons packs that you can play with, even a holo that looks quite nice, fonts, wallpapers, lock screen wallpapers, boot animations, and finally sound packs, all of them customizable. There are also options for the interface, like the status bar. You can show clock, battery status, percent, brightness control, others, quick settings panel that can be customized as well with smaller tiles and things like that, tiles and layout, sound mode. So a lot of customizability here, which is probably the selling point, so to say, of CyanogenMod. There are also advanced security features like privacy guard and whisper push. So let's look them up. So this is it: security area, screen lock, encrypt phone, verify apps, and privacy. So this privacy guard that manages which apps have access to your personal data, very important feature. And then there is whisper push that manages secure SMS feature. As far as I know, this one is able to encrypt your texts if you're feeling paranoid. You can also assign button actions. If you go to the button area, if you do a certain long press on a button, it means something. If you do a certain press on another capacitive buttons, it means something else. Double tap it, you can change its meaning. So you can even custom the actions that you can do by pressing some of the buttons in a certain way. A lot of options here, and as I said, you can mess with the status bar, change the options, and in the sound area you'll find the famous quiet hours. You can set a certain amount of time for those quiet hours, applying to notifications, haptic feedback, system sounds, and all that. Okay, other options here, well, buttons and profiles, privacy, security. So you basically saw everything there is to see in the interface and in the settings. Very minimalistic, keeping it stock and at the same time customizable. So all the things that people love about Android are here on the OnePlus One. Okay, this is the end of the review. It's time for the pros and cons. So let's see what the OnePlus One means for gsandon.com. On the pro side, we have a cheap phone, $300, a customizable phone, highly customizable as far as the software is concerned. We got very powerful hardware. As you just saw, it beats everything in benchmarks. We have a pretty good battery, I would say, at about almost 9 hours of playback. I'm happy with that. Fast charging, less than 2 hours. Very loud speakers, pretty good display, lots of camera options, and very well organized camera UI. This is important even nowadays. On the negative side, this phone is very big and very long for the average user. There is no stabilization for the camera, and the camera is only good but not very good. While this phone may be a flagship, the camera doesn't exactly feel like the highest end flagship possible. It's only, so to say, end of 2013 good, if you want. Okay, and I would say this device is very hard to find, which is another con aspect. Okay, now let's give it some grades. gsandon.com, we're going to give it an 8.7 out of 10 for design. I'm also going to give it a 9.7 out of 10 for hardware, and a solid 10 out of 10 for OS and UI. And finally, a crazy grade, I know it's crazy, an 11 out of 10 for the price. I know, once again, it's crazy, but it deserves it. Incredible price, $300 for such a phone with such a hardware. You cannot miss it. Okay, so the final grade is 9.85 out of 10 for this model, the OnePlus One, the famous OnePlus One, and it's the new phone of the year here at gsandon.com. It beats the LG G3, that was the previous phone of the year. So yes, you heard it at gsandon.com, OnePlus One, 9.85 out of 10, and phone of the year for us at just $300, a super phone. That's it from gsandon.com, bye bye.